Welcome to your weekly Wednesday webinar with Squibbler. I'm Moxie, and I'm excited today to talk to you about writing diverse characters and how you can create authenticity and representation in writing these characters. So in this webinar, we're going to talk about principles for success in writing diverse characters. We'll look at how to aim for authentic characterizations and common mistakes to avoid when you're working on writing diverse characters. So why should you include diversity in your writing? This isn't about checking boxes just to make sure that everybody has got a part to play in your story. It's about reflecting the rich complexity of human experience and creating characters that resonate with authenticity and depth. So very few societies around the world are homogenous. Diversity is cross-cultural, it transcends time, so you'll be reflecting what already exists in the world around you. Another reason is representation. Stories shape how we see ourselves and others. So we do want to include authentic and diverse characters to provide much needed representation for underrepresented communities. And think about your community around you. Is everyone the same on an economic, a cultural, a social scale? Probably not. So what you'll be doing is reflecting what you see in everyday life. Our world is diverse. Stories that reflect this reality feel more genuine and relatable to broader audiences. Different backgrounds also bring unique perspectives and conflicts and story possibilities that can elevate your narrative in ways you maybe hadn't considered. So before you begin, it is a good idea to do a little bit of research and understanding, and there are lots of ways that you can do this as you're looking to include diverse characters in your writing. One is through primary sources. You might take a look at memoirs, interviews, documentaries, and first-person accounts from people that have had that lived experience that you're going to be writing about. If you're looking at something from a historical perspective, we also have a webinar on historical sources on Discord that may be useful to you as well. Another thing you can do is cultural immersion. You can attend cultural events. You can visit relevant locations, engage with communities, but just please make sure you're respectful and genuine when you're interacting. Another thing that a lot of writers will do and a lot of publishing companies will do is if a work is including diverse characters, is that they'll hire a sensitivity reader. These can be people from the relevant background who can review your work for authenticity and potential issues they might see with the characterizations you're developing. One thing that's important is to make sure you're looking for multiple perspectives. You don't want to rely just on one single source because experiences may vary widely within any group of people. So here's an example of how you might do some research before you begin writing a project. Let's say that I want to write a book about a second generation a Korean American who works in the tech industry in Seattle. Some things I might consider are Korean immigration patterns and family dynamics within that group. I could look at second generation immigrant experiences and identity conflicts. This is really big with people who have moved to other countries and are second generation. You can look at Korean American communities in Seattle specifically, if that's where I'm going to write about. You might also look at the tech industry culture that your character might be a part of and entrepreneurship challenges. You might do a little bit of looking into generational differences in Korean American families. There are big differences between first generation immigrants and the subsequent generations. And look at how Korean cultural values might influence business decisions. All of these are going to help you create a rich character that's based on your study of a Korean American person who lives in Seattle and works in the tech industry. So as you're doing some research, there are some do's and don'ts that will help you, collect your information better. You do want to read books by authors from the background you're writing. That's really important. Study the historical and social context that the person you're going to be writing about is living in as well. Take a moment to learn about those internal community discussions and debates within the community you're writing about, and understand how intersecting identities create unique experiences, because not everybody's experience within a culture is going to be the same. And then think about regional and generational differences. How is someone who's older going to approach something versus someone who's younger? Some things to avoid doing, of course, or to avoid stereotypes and don't look to popular media for representations. Those aren't always well rounded. Don't assume all people from a background are the same. Um, if has a background that it has a traumatic experience in it, for example, war or poverty or slavery, don't use their trauma as the only defining characteristic of their behavior. You don't make sure you don't write on based only on limited or outdated information. It's important to look at what's current as well. And be sure that you don't ignore the complexity of cultural identity. It's not a one size fits all approach. So, as you're doing your character development, there is a way to layer this approach. And you want to start with what's called core humanity. And let's start with human universal traits. We all share things that are common in our humanity. These are things like fears, desires, personality quirks that anyone can relate to. Then you want to break it down a little bit into their personal history. How has your character's background shaped their worldview, but not defined their entire existence? Think about contemporary reality. How do your characters navigate their identities in their current environment and story setting? And most important, what is the individual voice? What is important about this character? What makes them unique, even within their community? So one way that you can work on developing your character is through voice. We also have a webinar on voice on our Discord server in the resources library, if this is an unfamiliar topic to you. But things like vocabulary choices, these can be influenced by education, by region, by generation. Very important to take a look at how your characters might be speaking based on these things. Think about cultural references. These should be things that feel natural and not forced in your development of your characters. All of us do code switching to some degree. We behave differently and we speak differently in different social contexts. So you might think about that with respect to your characters. And think about thought patterns that might be influenced by cultural values. So there is an exercise that you can do if you're interested. And we have something similar in our character development webinars on the Discord as well. And we have some free worksheets there to help you develop your characters. So for your character, you might want to try to create 3 goals that are not related to their identity. What do they want that has nothing to do with their background? Do they want to get married? Do they want to start a business? This is really important to have as well. They should have an internal contradiction if it's an important character. This is going to be a belief or a trait that creates some internal conflict for them. And then think about their cultural connection. How do they relate to their heritage? Do they relate positively, negatively, or is it more complex for them? You can also think about the unique perspective that your character can bring to your writing. What is a viewpoint that they might have that comes from their specific combination of experiences? And do they have a blind spot? Is there something about them that they don't understand about themselves or others? So this could be a character arc example using what we've just taken a look at here. Let's say that I'm going to include a character who's a Latina chef in New York City. Her name is Maria Santos. And beyond her identity, just her race, her gender, or her cultural background, what does she want, right? She dreams of opening a restaurant that is going to combine molecular gastronomy with the traditional techniques she's learned from her family. This might cause a cultural and internal conflict because she's struggling with honoring those family recipes that's been passed down from generation to generation, but she also wants to be innovative. The cultural reality here, too, is that she might be experiencing some negative assumptions that she has to navigate about what authentic Mexican food might look like to customers and critics. How is she going to navigate this? And then personal growth. How is this character going to learn to define what she considers authentic on her own terms? And that is by incorporating these techniques she wants to incorporate. And what is the universal theme that this character might hold? That's a balance between tradition and innovation in pursuing her dreams. That's a universal idea that we can connect with. So, some principles for success, these are core principles for success in developing diverse characters for your writing, is humanity first. You want to think that all of your characters, regardless of their background, if they're important and they have a name in your project, they should be fully realized human beings and they should have strengths and flaws, dreams and fears. You want to avoid tokenism. Characters shouldn't exist just because they represent a demographic. They need to have their own agency and story arc as well. Intersectionality also matters. People have multiple identities that intersect. You're not just a product of your race or your gender or your class. You're a mix of these things. So think about those connections between race and gender, class, sexuality, disability, religion. All of these are going to influence your characters' behavior, their dialogue, and so forth. If you do research, again, make sure you're being respectful about it. Approach other cultures and experiences with genuine curiosity and respect, and not any assumptions. One thing to avoid, of course, is the stereotype trap. Stereotypes persist because they might contain some fragments of truth, but they're extremely dangerous, especially in your writing, because they're going to reduce complex characters to simple categories. So the key is understanding the difference between cultural patterns and individual expression. So how can we avoid something like the stereotype trap? You want to aim for authenticity versus accuracy. Authenticity means that your reader will experience emotional and psychological truth of the experience of your characters. Accuracy is where you're coming up with correct details about culture or history or practices. Both of these matter, but authenticity is more important than perfect accuracy. A character who feels real but gets some cultural details wrong is better than a technically accurate character that feels like a Wikipedia entry where everything is just kind of ticked off to match their cultural experience. So here are some common problematic patterns that you want to avoid as you're developing your characters. One is the magical minority. You shouldn't have a character that exists only to help your white protagonist grow. That's not really giving them their own story arc or fully realized characterization. You want to also try to avoid the tragic backstory. Trauma shouldn't be the only source of the character's depth if they're an important character in your novel. It's also important to make sure you're not creating the perfect victim, that you don't have flawless characters who never make mistakes. You don't want to have someone who's the cultural expert, the professor in that specific diverse character you're trying to create. They shouldn't be there to explain their cultures to others. And then be careful that you don't create an assimilated versus traditional binary system in your work. This is a false binary of cultural identity. Getting used to your identity and finding your place in the world is a spectrum. It's not just black and white. So some ways that you can work around this, some better alternatives, are to establish equal agency. Give your diverse characters their own goals, their own character arcs. Have complex motivation. These can be multiple sources of character development for your characters. Your diverse characters, just like your other characters, your protagonists, your antagonists, should have human flaws. Let them make mistakes and learn. They should not be perfect. You want to integrate your characters and the culture seamlessly. You want to have the culture as a background, but not a constant explanation. So you don't just have a character who's explaining the culture. And again, think about including a spectrum of identity that shows the complexity of cultural relationships and not just a binary system where one is fully immersed and integrated into society versus someone who is not. So here's an example of how things might go wrong and might turn into stereotype or caricature versus how you can change that. A problematic example of a diverse character could be the wise old indigenous character who gives spiritual advice to a white protagonist. You'll see this a lot in older films, especially older cowboy films. You could transform this. Have a contemporary indigenous lawyer who's struggling with an indigenous law case while dealing with family expectations. This person is also mentoring a younger colleague in legal strategy. You're giving a lot more depth here by including these details. We get to see someone not just dealing with things in their field, in their culture, but also more human, more common things in humanity, such as family issues and so forth. And why is this better? You've got professional expertise, personal conflict. The mentoring role isn't just about mystical wisdom, but professional knowledge. So you want to make sure you're aiming for ensuring authenticity as well. The goal is not perfect representation, it's being respectful representation. Write with empathy, research thoroughly, and remain open to feedback and growth. And here are some practical tips for you as you're undertaking this journey. It might be a good idea to work with a sensitivity reader. And these are usually hired. You can look for these online. So when you're writing outside of your own experience, especially for your protagonist, it's probably a good idea to find someone in the culture you're writing about and ask for feedback. You can find these through writing communities, social media, professional networks, sensitivity reader databases, and so forth. What you can expect from working with a sensitivity reader is some feedback on authenticity. You do want to get that from them. You want to ask if anything that you've written is potentially harmful to that community. Is it culturally accurate? And does the character development ring true? So, and your role as a writer is to listen openly to what your feedback is. Ask clarifying questions and be willing to revise based on the feedback you get. It's also a good idea to have a checklist prepared if you're going to work with a sensitivity reader. So one thing you can ask for is if the character has agency and goals that go beyond their identity. You can ask if the cultural details feel integrated and not just performative. You can ask if you have avoided obvious stereotypes and tropes. You can ask if your character's voice and dialogue feels natural and consistent. Ask to see if it feels like you've researched contemporary and historical context without overwhelming the reader. And ask if the character that you're including contributes meaningfully to the plot. Your ways to handle criticism and feedback, of course, are to stay open to criticism. Even harsh feedback often contains valuable insights. You want to separate your intent from your impact. Just because you have good intentions in including a character doesn't mean that that might not have a harmful impact to people that are members of that community. Try to get multiple perspectives if you can. One person's opinion isn't universal, but if you have patterns, you should pay attention. And try to be open to ideas and learning continuously. You want to treat your experience with a sensitivity reader as ongoing education, not just a one-time task. So here's an authenticity check exercise that you can test with your characters if you're including diverse characters in your work. You can write a scene where they interact with someone from their own background, or where they face a challenge that's not related to their identity and make a decision that reveals their values. After you've written this scene, ask yourself, does this feel like a real person, or is it just a collection of cultural signifiers where I'm trying to include a character simply because they are from a different community? You can ask if your diverse characters have goals that are unrelated to their identity. What do they want that isn't part of their background? Are they more than just their trauma or struggles? Do they have relationships that aren't defined by their differences? And would someone from the background that you're writing about recognize themselves positively? If you would like to read more about that, we do recommend reading Writing the Other by Nisi Shawl and Cynthia Ward. This has a lot of this book has a lot of practical tips and exercises to help you in writing about diverse characters. You can set up an action plan as well if you'd like to. There are research tools that you can look for. You can investigate oral history projects. These would be first-person accounts from various communities. You can contact cultural centers in the community you're writing about for local resources, and watch documentary films, visual storytelling from different perspectives. You can also look to online communities. Writing Diversely is a Facebook group for writing diverse character discussions. And you can look for a sensitivity reader directory, find qualified readers for your work, Sites like Fiverr and Upwork do have sensitivity readers for hire as well. You can also attend professional development sessions. Look for diverse writing workshops, hands on learning opportunities. You might consider taking cultural competency courses, academic and online options, and attend writing conferences where you can network and learn from diverse authors. So, one thing that you might think about with your action plan is identify some areas where your writing could use more diversity. Choose one character to develop using those principles that we've gone over. Create a research plan for this character's background and find and connect with sensitivity readers, or join a community focused on diverse storytelling. So, some takeaways from this session: creating credible, diverse characters is both a craft skill and it's an ethical responsibility. It's going to require research, empathy, humility, and continuous learning. The effort is worth it, not just for the communities that you're planning to represent, but for the richness this will bring to your community and storytelling. Start small, be respectful, you want to stay curious, and remember that authenticity comes from treating every character as a complete human being deserving of dignity and complexity. So, in this webinar, we have taken a look at principles for success in writing diverse characters. We looked at some ways to aim for authentic characterizations, and we looked at some common mistakes to avoid in writing diverse characters. Thank you, as always, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this and that you learned something, and we will see you next week.